comments as well. So to Saudi now.
Your Excellencies, distinguished head of states, business leaders, innovators, creators, and my fellow Africans. I stand before you today not only as an artist, but as an African who believes that this generation has a responsibility to finish the work that history left incomplete. Africa is not short of talent. We are not short of ideas. We are not short of ambition. What we have been short of is access. Access to markets, access to capital, access to opportunity, and sometimes access to each other. Borders were drawn without us. Yet, decades later, they decide who can trade, who can travel, who can grow, and who must wait. This is why this moment matters. Make Africa borderless to me is not a protest. It's not a complaint. It's a call to action rooted in economic sense, dignity, and Africa's self-belief.
Message from South Korea. So we've got our distinguished panel. I just quickly run through them again. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, Samia Nkrumah, Ras Mubarak, Ambassadorial Dako. Yeah. So let me start with you, Chair of the APN Council, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Happy Independence Day, Madam.
Indeed, happy Independence Day to Ghana. And to all of us, because Ghana opened the door for all of us.
Fantastic, and thank you for your tireless work. My first question to you, Madam Chair, is as architect of the AU's Agenda 2063, tell us, what did you have in mind with that agenda? 2063, that's still, over 25 or so years from now, maybe 30 years actually, 30 something years from now. What did you have in mind with that Agenda 2063?
The Agenda 2063, our view was that we must have an agenda to build the Africa we want. And building the Africa we want has already started. It's not going to start in 2063. 2063 will be a day of celebration of the Africa we want that we would have built. And the Africa we want is an Africa that understands that it has to be integrated, peaceful, prosperous, but that all will have to be done by Africans themselves. And it's an Africa that understands that the most precious resource we have is the people. 1.5 billion, 60% young people. That's the most precious resource that we must invest in. That's why it talks about a skills revolution. Because it is those young people, it is the people that will create the prosperity, that will turn our natural resources into wealth, our mineral resources into wealth, that will build the infrastructure that will connect us, that will build the energy infrastructure, which is the lifeline for industrialization. So
yeah,
that's what we had in mind.
Some young people, a lot of young people believe 2063 is too far away. Too far from now. What do you think? What's your response to young people who say 2063
My response is that when a child is born, the parents plan that we want this child to be a doctor. But it doesn't mean that the child will be a doctor now. It means they'll put everything that it takes for that child to become a doctor. So it's not about that we will wait until 2063 and do nothing. It's about building that Africa now. And 2063 is just a year where we will all gather in Addis to celebrate the centenary of the OAU, now AU. But the building of the Africa we want has already started. That's why we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That's why we have many Yes, we may not be going as fast as we would like, but that has started already. It's not going to start in 2063.
All right. Which my math was wrong earlier on. It's actually 37 years from now, almost 40 years from now. Let's come to the Abuja Treaty, madam. Tell us about the Abuja Treaty of 1991. What is that about? And why is it important?
Well, the Abuja Treaty was about really creating regional economic areas, and also ensuring that eventually in those regional economic areas we have a common customs union, and eventually then Africa will have a customs union, but starting with the regional economic communities. And also Africa having a Pan-African parliament of parliamentarians elected across the continent. That's what really it was about, integration of Africa, basically. Not just physically, but economically.
You would agree that this movement, the Make Africa Borderless Now movement, speaks to this vision of the 1991 treaty?
It does. I would completely agree, it does.
But what do you think about the pace?
The pace is very slow.
Yeah, the gap, because there appears to be a huge gap between 1991 and the milestones that were supposed to be achieved towards 2028. Can we hit the final milestone for 2028? And if not, what must we do to make that happen?
Well, first, we must have the political will to do it. The governments must make sure that they do what they are supposed to do. But I think as citizens, we've also dropped the ball, because we need active citizens and active citizenry that will hold governments to account, that will hold them accountable. But if the citizens do not play their part, then we will not get to where we should be. Because governments can, as we have seen, they don't take this seriously. We have for instance, the Protocol on Free Movement of People was signed off in 2018 by 32 countries, but only 4 have ratified. But if the citizens in all our countries were active in saying to their governments and their parliaments, please rectify this, you agree to it, rectify it. We need 15 countries, we only have 4. Once 15 countries have rectified, it will come into force. But I feel strongly that the citizens must hold us governments accountable.
From your own personal experience, traveling a lot around the continent, how much do you have to have visas before you travel into the various African countries you've traveled to, even for you?
Well, I'm a bit fortunate.
In other words, how borderless is Africa for you?
For me, it is a bit more borderless than it is for ordinary citizens for two reasons. One, I've got a diplomatic passport, but I also have the AU passport that allows me to travel across different countries. So for me, and I don't like it because it should be citizens that have free movement, not just me. But the citizens can have free movement even now if they had the African passport. The African passport was launched in 2016, and it was agreed that, like the ECOWAS passport, the different member states must issue it to their citizens. But none of the countries are issuing it to their citizens, because if you have that passport, you should be able to move freely across the continent.
By the way, I like your Ghana colors today, your kente.
Yes, thank you.
It's beautiful. You look stunning.
Thank you.
You look stunning without it, but even more stunning with it.
The kente looks stunning, even without me.
You complement each other.
Yes.
Let me, come to Ras Mubarak, and then I'll return to you later on, Madam Zuma. Ras Mubarak, are you there? Good afternoon, Ras, and happy Independence Anniversary to you and to everybody. To Ras is a paid tourism and unity campaign. He's been traveling all over the continent. He was a lawmaker previously. Did you do a term or two, Ras?
A term.
You did a term, okay. But now you're spending your next term traveling around the continent. Tell us about your experience, in summary, traveling around the continent.
Well, inaction has always
smash the borders down.
Thanks, Kweku, and good afternoon again. Inaction has always not been an option for me, and as Africans, inaction about Africa's integration should not be an option. And so we drove across 31 African countries, 28 of which were exclusively by road. We had to take visas for 11 countries. And those visas cost me and my team well in excess of $12,000. For the ordinary African student or market woman, this is a bit of an ask, And aside the challenges of, acquiring visas, there were bottlenecks with infrastructure. I mean, there's a huge infrastructure deficit in many parts of Africa, and I would imagine an Africa where you could sit in a train in Algiers, and go all the way to Cape Town in South Africa. And, this is certainly possible. But it also exposed us to the beauty, the splendor of Africa, the opportunities inherent within, this great continent of Africa. So in spite of the challenges, delays at the borders, there were instances where we had to wait for about 5 hours at the border simply because a network was down, and this clearly is indicative of the fact that we need infrastructure, not only, for the roads and rail, but infrastructure at the land border. And it's exceedingly crucial for heads of government in Africa to bring on, institutions like the African Development Bank to finance some of these bottlenecks that are inhibiting travel, trade, and tourism within the continent of Africa. But the journey also exposed the inertia of the African ruling elite, who are quite comfortable with the status quo, who may have signed up to the protocols on free movement of people, but have not been able to ratify, the protocol that would make it easier for people to travel, to trade, to reside, and to start businesses in the respective African countries. And
if I can interrupt you for a second, what do you think accounts for that inertia? Madam Zuma says there appears not to be political will, but what do you think? Where do you think the fire must come from to ginger up that political will that is missing?
Well, the fire obviously has to come from the citizenry, and all African citizens would have to make it a point to demand for African leaders, heads of state, to smash the borders, to make it easier for people to move freely. Excellency,
you've driven across many African countries to try to do this. And of course, everybody can't do that. What do you think citizens of Africa must do to close the gap, to fire up the political leadership, to ginger them to action and put action to the signatures they signed in 1991?
Well, clearly, we've got to push for governments, to fully ratify the protocols that they have signed. We as citizens, would have to get on board, put our shoulders to the wheel and sign the petition. We're trying to get, 10 million signatures as soon as possible. And clearly, this is the least that every citizen of Africa who's got access to the phone and the internet can do as their contribution, to this great cause. Beside that, the political class also have to wake up to the realization that the sooner we made it easier for our people to prosper in Africa, the better for all of us, because without prosperity for our teeming youth, it poses, security risks for everybody, not just the market women who are going to Burkina Faso to buy tomatoes, but, the politician who resides in cantonments or East Legon with high-rise walls and guard dogs and electric fences. If the youth of Africa are not kept busy through sustainable employment, through the creation of opportunities for all of us, it's going to be a situation where we all do not want on our hands. And that is why the case has to be made. I don't think there's been a compelling case enough, for Africa to be borderless, for Africa to be visa-free, for Africans to move and reside and trade amongst ourselves, and I think through campaigns like this, spearheaded by the African, Prosperity Network, can actually create some level of impetus, because there are so many people who are ignorant about the benefits, inherent in Africa being borderless. You hear every now and then somebody make it, especially from here in Ghana, people making comments that, no, we don't want Africa to be borderless so that Nigerians would come in and create problems, forgetting that Nigerians don't even require visas to come to Ghana in any case. And secondly, forgetting that we are better together as Africans. The more we're able to interact with each other, the better for us. And there's also a typical example that happened recently in Zambia, where, our President Mahama of Ghana was in Zambia, and his fugu, one of the traditional dresses from here in Ghana, was described as a blouse. Now, this is indicative of the fact that there's no cultural exchanges amongst us as Africans. And in smashing the borders, there's got to be a lot of public education through drama, through play, through public broadcasts, through artwork, etc. This is the only way, or some of the easier tools we can use. Getting our musicians together, for instance, creating songs that spur the spirits of Africa and encouraging everybody, to work together. Bringing our, actors and actresses together, to perform in drama, in play, in movies, that clearly extrapolates the benefits that we would derive, from smashing the borders open. I mean, can you imagine?
So I was just going to ask you, during your travels, you met several presidents, a number of heads of state, correct?
That's correct. We met, heads of state.
And what did you say to them? And what did they say back to you?
Well, we made a case for the unification of Africa, for the opening up of Africa, for Africans to be able to travel within the continent of Africa, without the requirements of visas, especially at this time when the rules-based order has been smashed, and it's become imperative for Africans to be able to trade a lot more amongst ourselves, travel a lot more amongst ourselves. I mean, Kweku, can you imagine that Russia and Ukraine go into a conflict or a war, and then we're starving in Africa, in spite of the arable land we have, the good climate, etc. So the message clearly went down well with some of those heads of state who are very conscious, about the greater need for us to make Africa.
Which one of them did you meet? Which ones? Who did you meet?
In West Africa, for instance, we met Prime Minister Uriba of Guinea-Conakry. We met the Vice President of Liberia. In East Africa, we met Excellency Yoweri Museveni. We met with the Vice President of Zambia, Mutali Nalulunga. We met the King of Lesotho, King Letsi III. We met with, speakers of parliament in places like Eswatini, several ministers.
What did you say? I'll be interested in what you said, what the meeting with President Museveni was like, and what did you say to him?
Well, it was a very exciting meeting. It was supposed to last 20 minutes. It ended up lasting for about 45 minutes. Museveni is one character who is very passionate about the African continent. And he said to us that indeed, he envisages a situation where Uganda would be visa-free in the next 3 to 4 years for, Africans coming to Uganda.
That was going to be my next question. Did you need a visa to go to his country?
We didn't need a visa to go to
Uganda.
To go to Uganda and a host of countries within East Africa, simply because of the strength of the Ghanaian passport. But bilaterals, as we have seen with successive governments of Ghana and other African countries, are good in themselves, but they are slower because parliament sometimes take a while to ratify some of these agreements. And there's a lot of them that have been signed but have not been brought into fruition. So it's important that we draw lessons from countries that are doing well. I'll give you a quick examples. Rwanda, a country that has risen from the ashes, a country where 1 million people perished as a result of the genocide in the 90s. And in spite of that, this is a country that shares border with conflict zones. So you've got Burundi on one side, you've got DRC on the other side. Now, Rwanda's case smashes the argument that it poses a security threat. You've got a country that is, ensconced or surrounded, by these conflict areas. And in spite of that, Rwanda is saying, look, I want my African brothers and sisters to come in without visa restrictions. And if Rwanda is able to do it, Ghana, which has been the epicenter of the Pan-African agenda, has no business requiring Africans to pay $200 to come to, Ghana on tourism or on business. And so it is our hope that, Ghana will be at the forefront in championing, not just a visa-free policy, but also, a borderless Africa for all African nationals.
Thank you, Ras. We'll pause with you for the moment as I pivot to Samia Yaba Nkrumah. Good afternoon and happy anniversary, Samia.
Yeah, good afternoon and happy Good afternoon, Kweku, and everybody, and happy anniversary and happy Ghana Independence Day to not only Ghanaians, but all Africans. Because I think Ghana's rise and independence somehow encouraged so many other African states, and not just African states, but also Africans in the diaspora, the whole global family, to rise up. So we influenced the civil and human rights movements in the States in the 60s just as much as we helped liberation movements through camps, military camps, campaigns, and everything. So it's, I think, happy Independence Day to the whole of the African nation.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you to you for joining us. Samia, what would your father make of the state of, what would your father make of Africa today?
Yeah, that's a difficult, it's a difficult question because the answer
Which is why I asked you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if we want to be very honest, and we are not minimizing the advancements we've made, because we've made some progress, no doubt about it. But, you know, in all our father's books that he wrote, in his speeches, there are a number of things that he kept on repeating. Because one of the things I think that he gave us is ideas as tools to achieve social ends. To improve our standard of living. So Pan-Africanism, as he articulated, as he brought it to African soil, as he institutionalized it through the OAU and other initiatives. Sorry, there's something blocking. Is that okay?
No, please go ahead.
Yes, I was saying one of he gave us these ideas to empower us to change our condition. And in all his books, there are a number of recurring themes. He spoke about the need for African unity, not piecemeal, but comprehensive, economic and political and military and so forth. Another thing keeps on recurring in his books, he spoke about the importance of industrialization, strengthening and building our manufacturing base. Because you can't do anything without, this is what he was telling us, the message, without these steps, without African unity, comprehensive, without industrialization, you can't do much. You will struggle. You might have the good intention, but you are not going to go far. And I think, speaking of his independence proclamation, which in itself is a vision, by the way, I think we all must read it again and again. He told us something which we didn't maybe quite understand. And when he said the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation.
The total liberation of the African continent.
Yes, meaning total liberation, economic, political, social, in every way. So
but
I don't.
But sorry to interrupt you. He said, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all else shall be added unto you." We sought the political kingdom, and we're still groping for economic progress, advancement. Not everything. Many things have not been added onto us.
Good. We sought the political kingdom, micronationalism, but he was also talking about the political kingdom of the African nation that must be. And that nation went beyond a geographical entity. That's why it includes the whole African family, the global family, or the diaspora, as we like to call them. So this is the point we are coming to today. If we are going to pursue unity in piecemeal, like economic integration only, like the AFCFT, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if we are going to just focus on the details of, say, one aspect of unity, economic unity, it's going to take us a very long time to achieve anything worthwhile. And I think we've seen that in our lifetime. It's been 60 years and we are talking about African unity. So what he said is, we need to form a commission at the time, the OAU, which is today the AU. And decision makers in our countries must sit and think of how we can implement political union. Because every decision we make, every decision for economic unity is what, Kweku? It's a political decision. It is a decision that our political actors or decision makers have to make. Having a common currency is a political decision. Having a borderless Africa is a political decision. So all problems, he also said, if I may quote him, the problem may be economic, but the solution is what? Is political. So I think what the younger generation has to grapple with is how can the different Pan-African groups, the intelligentsia, deep thinkers, decision makers, how can we who believe that the future of Africa is in unity, how can we sit and somehow have a framework to implement political unity? It will entail changing constitutions, it will entail education, because as Ras Mubarak was saying, I mean, the change has to come from the masses or the grassroots or the citizenry. Absolutely, you know. And I dare say, women have to embrace this task, because no big change has happened without women embracing and leading it. As, for example, in the case of Ghana's independence struggle in the 50s. And our father has this beautiful quote. He says that the degree of a country's revolutionary awareness can be measured by the political maturity of its women. So the political maturity of women in any cause that we want to further is absolutely important, because they are the most active grassroots mobilizers within a family and in a community. So we have a lot of work to do to educate ourselves. I think the first port of call is education. Education about what this unity that our fathers and mothers were talking about in the 60s, and the origins of this African unity. And another important thing that our father said is that we must not be perturbed. We don't have to, the 54, 55 countries, agree on everything at the same time quickly. It won't happen. So we can begin with nucleus of states who would agree, for example, to change their constitutions to allow for further unification. And as people see the good of what has happened, the progress, they will join in. You know, there's something about...
Can I interrupt you and ask on that note, just ask you about the AFCFT, the Africa Free Trade Continental Area. What do you make of it and its progress?
It's a wonderful initiative, a good framework. It's actually a must. And I dare say, if you look at it, this is what our father was saying when he was talking about economic integration. You know, it's an old new idea. In itself, it is good. We all subscribe to it. But the problem with it is it's not accompanied by parallel negotiations on political union. This is the biggest obstacle. And another problem, of course, that is at the background that's a bit disturbing is the fact that we have not industrialized to a satisfactory level. But our father would say that it is unity and pooling our resources, human and material and natural, together that will help us industrialize. You see, the key is if we work together, then can build our infrastructure, we can build our industries. So it's unity, freedom, unity, and development actually go hand in hand. The secret is how to find the wherewithal to do them together, not separately. So the AFCFT, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, but it's for it to move forward and move forward at the satisfactory rate that you and I and other citizens want. It has to be backed by parallel, commensurate political unity, or at least discussions, a framework to move us forward. And we definitely need a core crop of Pan-African leaders, Pan-Africanists to the core. But I mean to the core, you see, it entails some sacrifice. It entails a lot of sacrifice, because I can see from our father's life, everything he did, every policy, every aspiration he proclaimed or declared to us, everything he promoted, he made a sacrifice for it. And there was actually a fusion between his personal and his political life. So father marries an Egyptian woman. And this marriage was not, it became a love story in a way, because it worked, even though they only lived together for 8 years. But we used to joke and call it, it's a Pan-African romance. It's a Pan-African political marriage, because it was arranged and because it was a fruit of his great friendship with North African leaders, because those were the countries that were independent at the time in 57. And a fruit of his great friendship with Gamal Abdel Nasser, the then leader of Egypt. And when he has children, he calls his oldest son Gamal Abdel Nasser, after Gamal Abdel Nasser, his youngest son Sekou, after Sekou Toure, his great Pan-African ally also in West Africa. When he's forging a union like with Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, who was his protege, almost his son, our father was gutted when our mother said, when Patrice was assassinated. But so he forms this secret union, a secret agreement with the Congo. We don't speak, we have different official languages. The Congo is an enormous, the richest country in the continent, mineral wealth, as far as mineral wealth is concerned, our father would say. But he was saying something, that we can be as diverse as we want to be, but that does not stop us from talking about unity, because rather that our unity is based on a common political basis. So what we need to introduce in the discourse of African unity, as uncomfortable as it is political union. And I want, the last point I would make, I beg your pardon?
Sorry, go on.
The last point for now is how some of the leaders who even did not understand Kwame Nkrumah in the 60s, years later, began to understand him better. And one of those great leaders, I say he's a great leader because he is the great Tanzanian leader, Julius Nyerere, who was a great friend of our father's and even helped him after the coup d'etat after 66 and invited him to be in Tanzania. But our father wanted to be closer to Ghana. That's why he chose to be in Guinea with his friend and son Sékou Touré, and he had this special relationship with Guinea. But coming back to Julius, the great Julius Nyerere.
I'm sorry, Samia, can I interrupt you for a second? We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Sure. I want to acknowledge some of our sponsors, at this minute. Asasi Radio, City FM, Channel 1 Television, EIB Network, BRICS TV, Ayonda Media, our institutional partners, Borderless Alliance, Ayuda Nepad, Africa Finance Corporation, Ethiopian Airlines, Air Algerie, Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, Africa Collaboration Chamber, AFDBs, that's African Development Banks, Africa Visa Openness Index. And would also like to recognize Borderless Africa, I think I've mentioned that already. Sorry, excuse me, Borderless Alliance, Borderless Alliance. And also Stoneboy and Sarkodia and Africa Collaboration Chamber. I think I've mentioned them already. And with that, I'm going to transition to our final panelists. Hopefully we'll return to the others that we've spoken to earlier on, especially Madam Zuma, because she'll be leaving us before the end of the webinar. So to you, Gabi Asayo-Chiridako. Hello, Gabi. Happy Independence Day.
Your final panelist, because I see Stoneboy waiting. I see Yaya also waiting. I don't know if you called me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So excuse the slip. Yeah, Gabi, as many of you would know, is the executive chair of Africa Prosperity Network, which are the organizers of Africa Prosperity Dialogues, the annual dialogues that have taken place in Accra for the past 4 years, and also the brainchild of the Make Africa Borderless Now movement, and which is why we're here today. So, Gabi, your thoughts on some of the commentary that you've had from Madam Zuma, Ras Mubarak, Samia Nkrumah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all the speakers, and I see Stoneboy struggling. I think he went to bed 9 a.m. this morning, so because he had a big concert in Ho. But thanks for making the time. It shows how important the topic is. And I thought it was actually quite interesting to see Samia Nkrumah and Gabi on the same side. So, for those who don't know, I think our families were on the opposite side of the Ghana's political struggle. But the key thing is that I heard Nyerere saying in the 90s that they wish they understood Nkrumah earlier. And when there was this fight between the gradualists and Nkrumah's side, that they said, let's have the United States of Africa now. They wish they understood him and understood him well at the time. And quickly, let me just maybe take you through a little history, if you give me a few minutes. And I think it will then perhaps point out the political willness or the lack of political willingness that Madame Zuma spoke about, and also the political courage and the fundamental need of the political unity that Samia also spoke about. My disagreement, and some of us our disagreement, is it's, if you like, maybe because we're seeking first the political unity, all right, for countries that have just gained independence, and people who are enjoying being called His Excellency this, His Excellency that, with their little territories. And then you are saying that cede it to a greater body. And I think perhaps it is the framing of it, even though it is a political decision. Perhaps you could say that if they saw it as, let's cede some economic sovereignty as a way of getting the greater economic sovereignty of the whole, perhaps that would have made it easier to understand. But then let's look at it. 25th May 1963, when they formed the OAU, that's when Nkrumah was making such a strong case, but he didn't succeed. He succeeded in principle that the OAU was about to promote African unity and solidarity, but then the charter was strong about respecting the territorial integrity of the newly independent states. The charter was strong about sovereignty, So, but then at that time, the fight was for what? For freedom from colonial rule, if you like. Okay. But then a few years, what is interesting is that I think it was 1968 in Algiers, what they call the Algiers Resolution. That's about 2.5 years after Nkrumah had been overthrown. Then it suddenly realized that, look, let's get this economic integration off the ground. And they met again in 1970 at Addis Ababa to reaffirm the need for economic integration as a way of, if you like, building the Africa that they wanted at the time. In 1973, they met also again at Addis Ababa, and then they spoke about growing economic unity as necessary to sustain political independence. So they were beginning to recognize gradually the need for economic integration. Other than that, the sovereignty will be meaningless, which is to a point, perhaps the point that Nkrumah was making. And then in 1976, that's 50 years ago, they had what they call the Kinshasa Declaration. They met Council of Ministers, and then they spoke about the creation of an African Economic Community in successive stages. This was in 1976. Then the heads of states and governments also met in Libreville in 1977, a year after, and adopted it and said, yes, we're going to do economic integration, and we're going to call it African Economic Community. They met again in Monrovia in 1979, and they did what they called the Monrovia Declaration of Commitment and Determination, to get this economic integration going. A year later, they met in Lagos in what they call the Lagos Plan of Action, the final plan to get things going, to build this economic integration. April 1980. They met, and then they gave themselves 20 years. Because the Lagos Plan of Action was from 1980 to the year what? 2000. They gave themselves 20 years and said, by the end of the year 2000, we will have a common market in Africa. That's what they said. They will build the African Economic Community, which is coming from the Kinshasa Declaration of 1977. So they had to build, and then they committed to moving from rhetoric to building the strategy that would deliver it. And what was the strategy? That was a legal framework for integration, which is the Abuja Treaty. the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, which was in 1991. So they adopted the Abuja Treaty of 1991, and they had enough ratification that in 1994, it came into force. And then when it came into force, they said, well, let's give ourselves 34 years. And within the 34 years, they had some stages. And if I can just quickly go through that. They had 6 stages that they said they were going to go through. Now let's look at the stages. The methodology was to use the regional economic communities as the means of achieving unity, as the first step. The implementation stages were, like I said, 6. And the roadmap started with, by 1999, they were to strengthen the existing regional blocks. So they gave themselves 5 years to do so. Stage 2, by 2007, harmonization of tariff and non-tariff barriers within these regional blocks. And I think there are mainly 8 of them. Stage 3, by 2021, establishing a free trade area and customs union in each regional bloc. Stage 4, you could say that some have tried, as in ECOWAS, maybe EAC, maybe part of SADC that comes under ESAC.
It's 15 hours.
Then the stage 4, they said by 2023, a continent-wide customs union. So you finish the customs union within the regional blocks by 2021. 2 years later, then you have a continent-wide customs union. Now, what does that mean? When you have a customs union, it means that you will eliminate tariffs on goods traded among yourselves. And then you implement what they call a common external tariff. So things that come into the
union, the customs union.
Absolutely. Those are the things that will get taxed.
So that the barrier, the wall is built around the community, not within the community.
And what does that do? It gives then an incentive for industrialization. Because now you're not looking at 30 million people, 6 million people, 50 million people. You are looking at 1.5 billion consumer market. Okay. So that's what they said. And then stage 5, by 2025, which was last year, they'll have a continent-wide African common market. Then this final stage, which is 2 years from now, 2028, a final economic and monetary union, which means in 2 years' time, we're going to have a single currency.
Supposed to have.
Oh, we are going to, please. They have adopted it. So please, and it's in force because it came into force in 1994. So we need to assume that we are going to have, we're going to have a single currency. We are going to have a central bank, an African central bank, a customs union, free movement of persons, the right to reside. Within 90 days, you can live in a country within 90 days if you are not working and then go back. And the right of what? Establishment. So you can set up business across borders, and Africa will then be effectively borderless. So then the question then you have to ask yourselves is, what happened? Because they put in place the structures, they changed from OAU to AU in 2002 because they felt that they needed a vehicle that could be customized for economic integration, better customized for economic integration. And then, as Madam Zuma said, a few years later, by 2018, what did they do? They met again at Addis Ababa and came out with the Free Movement of People protocol. Okay? And that protocol, it tells you how sad we have been, or our leadership has been, when it comes to implementing the very things that they agree to. only 4 countries have signed up to that, ratified it.
Which are the 4 countries?
Rwanda, Sao Tome and Principe, Mali,
Rwanda, Sao Tome,
Mali, and Niger. Incidentally, two of these 4 countries have been suspended from the AU. So effectively, we still need 13 signatories in order for it to come into being. So after,
and why do you think this is the case?
Well, let me answer that. But to answer that, let me start from here. After they adopted that protocol, 2 months later, they met in Kigali, and then they will agree to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and they set it up, and it came into being, and then they ratified it, and it came into being in 2021. Now, the disconnect, which will perhaps help us answer your question. Why do you sign up to an agreement that allows you to have a single market, but then refuse to sign the protocol that will enable free movement of people, goods, services, capital, culture, innovation across the union? So I can't understand the disconnect, because it wasn't surely coincidental that they passed the free movement protocol 2 months before the AFCFTA agreement was adopted. It wasn't by accident. But then how come they haven't? And the last country to sign up to it, to ratify it, was Niger in 2019. How many years ago? 7 years ago?
I mean, so it sounds like there've been a lot of meetings, lots of declarations, but what accounts for the gap? What are we afraid of? What are the leaders afraid of? What's their concern?
I think that's the question, really. What is their concern? Their concern, perhaps, is to do. I mean, if you say security, Kweku, you've been to Rwanda. It's perhaps one of the most security conscious countries on our continent. Even before you get to the airport, you come out of your vehicle and you go through some system with dogs and all that before you get to the airport. They are so security conscious, yet they think they are not afraid of free movement. The disconnect, and for me, it's you can't explain it. And the only way you can explain it is that perhaps our leaders have not been able to internalize it, that it is actually in our collective interest. It is in the interest of the very sovereignty that they are seeking to protect if economic integration happens. And
so what you say, so Rwanda appears to have addressed that concern using technology.
Using technology. Because really, if you have technology, look, what are the figures? Ghana, we have apparently, I think, 46 approved ports of entry or whatever, where in terms of our land borders. 46
land entry points.
And yes, 46 or so. Yet there are supposed to be about 240 that are unapproved. Okay? We have free movement within Ghana. Okay? Yet, if the security, and if really your concern is security, then the best way is to use technology. Because if we have a biometric passport or ID, we are not saying that a borderless continent means that you can just walk through, but you can be checked. But you don't need to apply for a visa. You don't need to be stopped and searched and all manner of stuff. You don't need to go through the processes, the bureaucratic processes that you spend money, it takes days, and then it frustrates business. And the thing is that we must wake up to the reality that our 55 fragmented economies can never deliver the jobs, the economy that is required in order to deliver prosperity for our people. I'll give you a typical example. European Union, there are 450 million citizens of the European Union. There are 27 countries. Unemployment is around 6%, 13 million. We live on a continent of 1.5 billion people. About 1 billion of our citizens in Africa, 1.1 billion or so, are under the age of 35. Around 500,000 of them are within the workforce, maybe from 15 to 35 or so, for 500 million. We are churning out between 18 to 20 million people joining the workforce every year. Our various fragmented economies can only create between 10 and 12 million jobs a year. So you have anything between 8 to 10 million people who are entering the workforce, yet we don't have the capacity to employ them. Almost every year, almost the number of people who are unemployed within the European Union. And why is that? Why is that the case? It is because our economies are so small, it doesn't even create an incentive for people to come and set up factories. Look at what
so
are the...
I'm gonna jump in, Gabby, but I'll return to you with the on this subject of fragmentation. You've got China, 1.4 billion people, India, 1.6 billion people, Africa, 1.5 billion. But China is one country, India is one country, Africa is 55 countries. We don't command economies of scale. And people trying to set up businesses have to deal with 55 regulatory entities. People will take their money elsewhere. And that's the point you're making. Let me switch quickly to Ambassador Ayanda Ngwane, also known as Yaya of Africa. She's a Pan-African Media Executive Vice President of Women, Community in Africa, an AU Agenda 2063 Ambassador, Managing Director of BRICS TV, West and Central Africa, Editor-in-Chief of the Diplomatic Envoy, which is a publication. You do so many things. Do you also play football? Ambassador Ayanda. Ambassador Ayanda. Okay, I'm not hearing her. So then I'm going to switch to, oh, she's here. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Yes,
How are you? Happy Independence Day, Ghana.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Can you hear me?
That's what we need.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
My network.
I was running through all the things that you do.
Day to
Happy
Ghana.
Independence Day. Happy Independence Day, Ambassador Ayanda. Yes,
sir.
So, where are you now? Are you in South Africa?
Right now, I'm in Abuja in Nigeria.
Did you need a visa to travel to? Did you need a visa? But you're from South Africa, am I correct? Where are you from? Yeah, you're from South Africa. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you need a visa to travel to Nigeria?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Unfortunately, yes. Yes. Yeah, when I started, before I get the work permit and residence, but yes, I needed a visa. Yes, sir. And we still need visa on arrival.
Right. So a borderless Africa, resonates with you.
Most definitely. Most definitely. That's the whole, that's why we're pushing the global, as it's rapidly changing, economic power, technology, and international alliances are shifting, creating new opportunities for region to redefine the influence. For Africa, this is the moment we present a critical opportunity to strengthen its position in the global stage and borderless Africa. That's my vision, my motto, what I believe every day.
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Hear me now?
Yes. So what is it that you do? What is it that you're involved in right now that makes your work relevant to the theme that we address?
A lot. First of all, I'm an AU press ambassador for AU agenda. I believe in the journalists and Pan-Africanism they call. Everything that promotes borderless free trade zone is what I believe is always I'm standing for as a Yaya of Africa. It's what I'm pushing, using my own pen and voice to push that agenda.
And what do you make of our campaign, Africa Prosperity Network's campaign for 10 million signatures with the ultimate objective of bringing down the barriers in accordance, in alignment with the leaders' own commitments by 2028?
I actually support the agenda, and I think so far we've gone so far because the global order is rapidly changing. Economic power, technology, international alliances are shifting, which is creating new opportunities for region to redefine the influence. For South Africa, this moment presents a critical opportunity to strengthen its position on the global stage.
And what do you think is the reason why there's a gap between commitment and action?
Can you repeat that? My network,
Okay.
Sorry. My network is
okay,
quite bad.
Yeah, I'm sure that when the agenda we are pushing for is executed, infrastructure across the continent will improve, and communication with you in Abuja, such as we're having now, will be hopefully even better. Let me ask you a question, and then I'll repeat the last one I asked you. In relation to your work, your Agenda 2063 ambassadorial work, tell us about it. Tell us about your 2063 ambassadorial work.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hear you. Yes, I can hear you very clearly. Can you tell us about your 2063, your Agenda 2063 ambassadorial work? Okay, line not working well. So maybe it's a good time to slot in a clip from the Africa Prosperity Network's ad. If it's ready, can we just slip that in while we tidy up the lines? And then when we come back, I'll jump to Stoneboy and Madame Zuma before she leaves.
In Accra, during the Africa Prosperity Dialogues, delegates from across the continent and the diaspora came together for the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026. They met to empower SMEs, women, and youth to make Africa borderless now.
We must begin to think of ourselves as Africans, not as Ghanaians, South Africans, Ethiopians.
Even though I'd been paid to perform, I was stopped at the border.
When Africans tried to pay Africans across borders, currencies detoured.
When Africa stood at the crossroads of integration, we did not hesitate. We chose action.
Play your part. It can be done. It must be done. We must have a borderless Africa.
Sign the petition. We want a borderless Africa now.
Africa's prosperity lies in its unity, in its oneness. Many treaties have been signed, but now it's time for execution and action. Sign the petition now at makeafricaborderlessnow.com. Let's build a new future for Africa, one signature at a time.
The Africa Prosperity Network's webinar to commemorate Ghana's 69th independence anniversary. And Africa Prosperity Network is also the brainchild of the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign. Now I've got a question. I'm returning to Madam Zuma. Madam, back to you. You've heard a lot from the other panelists. So my initial question to you is just your thoughts on what you've heard from the other panelists.
Thank you very much. I think I agree with what has been said. But what is important is let's find a solution to move forward. We all agree that we have declarations that we're not implementing. But now let's find a solution to get our member states to implement. I think actually we don't need any more decisions. If we just implemented what we have, we would have the Africa. We would be on the road towards the Africa we want. So,
Please carry on.
No, so I was saying the campaign, for instance, or the movement towards a borderless Africa is one way of getting our citizens to say to our heads of state, we want a borderless Africa. And I think we should move with that movement as much as we can. But I also think we should speak to some of the heads of state. Ghana is one of them. Nkrumah was from Ghana. Ghana was the first country to gain its independence. Maybe we should, and maybe looking at Accra Reset. Accra Reset must also take this agenda forward.
I've got here, yeah, thank you, Madam Zuma. I think we've got some questions, one or two that are directed to you and my colleague here. Perhaps you want to say who you are.
Right, my name is Kwabena JB Dongpo, with the Africa Prosperity Network, online editor for the Africa Prosperity Network. And we have a few questions here. And so before I get into it, if you have any questions, you should use the Q&A feature on the webinar, and we would be sure to read it out. And this is from Demetria Morgan, who's asking how young people across African countries can effectively hold their governments accountable. And it goes on to say that recently a video circulated online in Nigeria showing a local government chairman who allegedly went with bodyguards to assault a young woman who had made a video appealing for the renovation of a dilapidated school in her community. And so when speaking up for issues that affect children and the future of our societies, which can lead to intimidation or violence, what mechanisms or protections exist for citizens, especially the youth, to safely demand accountability and responsible leadership? The next question here is from Muhammad Yakubu, who says, Kweku, Africa has the youngest population in the world. As AI transforms education, work, and entrepreneurship. And so for him, as an AI enthusiast, he is interested in how African governments, the private sector, and universities can concretely take steps now to prepare African youth to lead in the AI economy, and rather than remain consumers of technologies developed elsewhere. The next question from Freezy says, or it's more of a contribution, it says that, I believe this can be achieved through actions we must engage governments, stakeholders within African countries to achieve the goal of a borderless Africa.
Thank you. So, Madam Zuma, would you venture some thoughts for these questions, comments that came from some of our young participants?
Okay. When you want to gain something, you must be organized. So young people must organize themselves. Because when you are organized, your voice is louder than if you are trying to do it in a disorganized individual way. And I think even during the struggle for independence, young people were organized. So I think that would be the first thing for me to say to the youth: be organized. And when you are organized, then present your views to the leaders, to the presidents, to the ministers, to parliamentarians, so that they know what you think and they know what you would like to see happen in the country.
Indeed, Madam Zuma, Mosaji for Kwame Nkrumah, excuse me, say that organization decides everything. That's a quote by Kwame Nkrumah, so you're absolutely right. If there's anything else you'd like to add on before you leave, Madam Zuma, please do so, and then we'll free you to your next engagement.
I also completely agree that our young people, one, they are innovative, they are talented, and I think they are capable of not just being consumers of technology, but innovators. And we've seen what they did in Kenya. We're seeing there are lots of examples, but we must encourage them not just to be consumers of AI, because AI is based on other people's narratives, other people's databases. We must also have our own so that it is relevant to our situation. Maybe I should leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Zuma, the chair of the Africa Prosperity Network Advisory Council and the architect of the African Union's Agenda 2063. And we hope that what you dreamed for 2023, the Africa we want, would indeed happen. And we, who knows, you might still be alive by then. With technology and everything.
Indeed, we might still be alive. But let me also say, we must avoid external factors that want to keep us divided.
So can you repeat that? We must avoid external factors that what?
To keep us divided.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Zuma, and best wishes for the rest of the day. I'm going to go on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam. I'm going to go on to Stoneboy now. Stoneboy, good to have you. I hope you had a great event yesterday. Happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to join this panel. And absolutely, I've been soaking all that is going on. And I've made a lot of points. Thanks to Chairman, thanks to Madam Zuma herself, and the team. I've been a part of African Prosperity Network from, I think, inception, where Chairman and I crafted the theme song for the whole revolution, as far as I see it.
And belated birthday wishes to you, by the way.
Exactly. Please, I'm taking 10 cedis donations. When we are done, I'll send you the mobile money so you can bless me.
We'll send it via PAPS.
Yes. So I mean, I really don't know where to start from, but this is actually very important. A conversation. I've heard Mrs. Nkrumah speak. I've heard Madam herself speak. And I think I strongly believe that this conversation have become a continuous diagnosis or just for the conversation's sake, where we quote the Nkrumah's writings, we quote the great ones that have come and gone, we reiterate their sacrifices that they have made, and then when we measure it with the progress on the ground after several years, same us are actually aware and are indicative of the fact that the progress is. Sorry, a call came in, I had to hang that. The progress that we make are very minute. When I say minute, I do not mean to disrespect any entity or any organization that tries to push it. I also heard about the ambassador who's pushing for the Make Africa, for the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want as a brand ambassador.
Mhm.
But for the African Prosperity Dialogue, last few weeks, I would have never heard about the Africa We Want initiative that is actually being spearheaded. Meanwhile, I'm one of the very few people who actually have direct and indirect impact on the very youth of the continent of Africa, and especially in Ghana. So that tells us that we have not been able to disseminate information down to the guy who didn't go to class 1, who is a child of a cocoa farmer, who is a child of a fisherman, and the majority of the populace, especially the youth that are, we ask ourselves, where are they? Where are those youths? Yesterday, we were able to bring together almost 20,000 in Ho, which is like, something that has not happened at this level in a long while. And it is not a political rally. This is to actually invest music and entertainment. Meanwhile, I use my platforms to make sure that I push the vibes and make them know that the Africa that our forefathers, the Nkrumahs, the J.B. Dankwes, and all the ones that have sacrificed their lives for, even military men, even down to the ones that would, military leaders, my bad, even down to the ones that would get crossed in some kind of crossfires in these coup d'etats and all these ones, they actually put their lives down. But one thing that I've always had a problem with is that when these discussions come about, it is kept at the upper level. For that reason, I went to school. I said, okay, let me go and see what is in this upper level. Went back to Gimpa, did 4 years in Covenants. Then I was hearing the whole thing. I'm like, okay, we're studying the problems that we have been studying. Then I moved on to international relations, masters. Then I said, okay, now I understand what is happening. And for me, I believe that only a few people have the passion to drive it. But meanwhile, it's like we discuss, like we all know here, we discuss. I might not use all these meetings, declarations, and all of those, but the implementation and the enforcement is very little. And like it confuses me. I mean, right. I am, in as much as we are pushing for borderless Africa, I wanted to pin these points, because I jotted them down. And then also, Mrs. Zuma, Her Excellency, actually was making a point about how she has access to the African passport, and then she is a diplomat. Meanwhile, we are pushing for the movement of people, not recklessly, but at least checked, but freely within the continent. How I want to ask, how have we sent the information across whereby the youth know? How accessible is that African passport? Where do you register? How do you go about it? What are the criteria that get you to get one? Because if it is from 2016, if it is from 2016 that has been in the system, why do we, how accessible is it to the African youth, to be able to grasp that and actually make moves? That's one of the questions that I'm also asking. So I'd be also my last point before actually even roping into my actual pointers that I have is that my bad. It's anyway, if you have any question, I think that will come back.
Yes, I've got a question. As a as an artist, as a creative, how would a borderless Africa, what does it mean to you and the work that you do and to the audiences around Africa that you have?
All right. Thank you. From my understanding, my music may reach or reaches over 100 millions of, people across Africa alone. I have the plugs, I have the data to prove how far and wide our music go. But here's the thing that really hurts me. Most of the people buying my music, streaming my songs, coming to my shows, they are not in Africa. They are in Europe, in America, and in the Caribbean. But my biggest fan base is actually in Africa.
Right. But okay, good. So your biggest fan base is in Africa. That's what you're saying. Yeah. But most of those who buy your music are not in Africa.
As far as I'm concerned, because those that buy them, I mean, that's I was making my point is the infrastructure in place for the sales in Africa itself alone, it cannot be recorded. Within which currency regime will that work? If they buy in Dallas, in Gambia, where I have a huge fan base, how does it translate? You need to go back to, we have to use the visas and all these ones. So I feel like the borderlessness of that, in that aspect, would directly make sure that your income within the African scope comes to you directly without a lot of deductions and without some forms of premium that are put on it. And eventually when the money comes, it's equal to nothing, which is what we are facing currently with the DSPs that we are using, because you can see a lot of people advocating for the fact that our music streaming is really not giving us anything worth living on, whereby we create these commodities and etc. So I believe that if Africa becomes borderless in terms of economic, infrastructure and how we are able to purchase, my music or international or intellectual property, creative arts, etc., we are going to enrich ourselves and therefore be able to invest back, and that creates a lot of employment, cuts down poverty, etc.
Right.
So that is what I
don't mean to interrupt you, but I guess the point you're making is that the reason why many of your fans, in Africa, where your largest fan base is unable to buy your to purchase your music is because the infrastructure isn't here. And we don't have
the payment systems. Exactly. Interoperable payment systems. Exactly.
It doesn't exist. So even though they would like to purchase your music, they're unable to, and others outside the continent rather are able to do so. But there's a flip side to this. That means you would, even if they can't buy music as much as they would like to, and you would want to, you would like to travel around the continent and have shows around the continent. That also means ease of movement. You have to have ease of movement. How easy is it for you to travel around the continent and perform?
No, it's not easy at all. I mean, the other streams of income for a creative is the performance, which is actually the highest one, aside the streaming. So the payment structure, the payment infrastructure is not really there. Then also moving across, I mean, I faced a lot of difficulties. I mean, I think last month or two, I performed at the African Cup in Morocco. My band, like the people I was traveling with, my team, had to be locked off up until they missed performance time. And then they were released. They arrived in the morning, but stayed on the border for like 8 hours before they were able to be released. And that is equal to returning them back to Ghana anyway. And that is from just Accra to Morocco, Casablanca. So you can understand, we face these. I've been to, one time I was going to an AU event, I think latter in May last year as well. We were stopped at the border, I mean at the airport, the immigration, and have had to pay $200 or 100 something. And I was making fun of the whole situation right there at the airport because I tried to be that vocal. And I was actually asking the guy, okay, if you're charging for 1 month. They say they charge for 4 weeks, I think $100. I'm not being accurate with the amount, but I'm staying for 3 days. So I say, let's make the math. If you're charging $100 for 1 month and I'm staying for 3 days, please just do the math and give me my 3-day fee so I can pay within the $100. And they were all laughing. And they say,
essentially, you just needed to pay like $3.
Exactly, because I'm staying for, and I was looking to some another white guy foreigner, and they were also like, I'm like, okay, I was asking, how long are you staying? He says 2 weeks. I said, okay, so even here, the mathematics is not working. Let's assume it's business. But then it's on African people. So I was happy to, and I'm still happy to see that definitely Ghana, Nigeria, or the West African community is, removing borders, and Rwanda far in the east, and South Africa recently. And so I'm grateful for that. I believe that gradually, as Ms. Zuma said, we're going to be able to achieve these things, But my last point that I was saying is that I think when these conversations come about, we make it remain at a level. I'm still thinking how we can have these conversations to the grassroots, because believe you me, the commoner that is affected, that needs to add their signatures to this petition, like the 25K people yesterday, only a few of them would understand, because they're educated, they have access to school, and we can all understand that. Even I had to go back to understand what is going on and the sort of English we use and all these kind of English. They don't know about this. They don't care about this. But they are the ones whose lives, like Ms. Zuma will say, that we need to make the youth we need to have the youth. How do we have the youth when majority of them are not even aware? They can't even understand the language in which these things that affect their lives are communicated into. So it's a question. How do we do so? And I think that is how persons like me come into this play. But as well, how involved how would you have input this thing? Apart from me now, how are we involving people who directly affect, these youth, and speak to them in the language they understand at these levels? These are my questions that I'm asking. I believe that when we are able to look at it from that perspective, making sure that we communicate in a language that the fisherman's child can understand as a strong and hardworking youth, we will be able to reach forward, because these ones, they have the power also, not only those that have access to education and can understand these stuff.
Thank you so much, Stoneboy. That be why we invite you. That be why you did the panel talk, you sabi. And that be why, and that be why we bring Sarkodie as well, because if you sabi the language. Some of the communication.
I like the way you just switched. You say you sabi the
absolutely
language.
Some of the communication for switch up to the language of the street.
Exactly.
You the barb.
Adebab. But you see, I really don't mean just the language in terms of pidgin. I mean how they can access this information and know that they are being spoken to. I think there's a disconnect over that side, and I plead that we should actually find ways in actually getting to communicate to the youth, which will help, because it's not just a Ghana problem. I think it's an African problem. Right. There's a big disconnect between the policymakers and the youth, but for only when they need them to come and vote. That's when you see how they actually implement every strategy that can bring them out to come and vote. But we need that same energy to bring the youth out to participate, in the prosperity stuff. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you so much. I'm going to switch back to Abuja. I'm going to switch to Ayanda Ngwane. Are you on? Oh, she's off. Okay, the connection is not stable. All right, then let me, is she on? No, all right. Okay, then let me go to Gabi. Excuse me, Gabi. You had your friend Stoneboy with regard to the communication gap between policymakers, decision makers at the top, and the African masses, for whom this is all about, really. And the question of fragmentation. as well.
I think he's absolutely right. And I think Madame Zuma also mentioned the same thing. I think what we should do, and that's actually what happened, the conference, the Manchester conference. What happened in the Manchester conference was that they took the Pan-Africanism struggle from the confines of the elite and to the streets. That's what happened after the Manchester conference, which...
And the Manchester conference, you're referring to the colonial era, pre-independence,
Du Bois,
Pan-African conference.
Absolutely, Jomo Kenyatta and Hastings when they met. And I think that's what we should do now. And that's what this whole campaign is about. You know, Stonebwoy has articulated it very well. And I explained something, for instance. When I was younger in Europe, we could, because the economy was big enough, you could go and do some part-time work, even as a student, okay? Make some money, get a cheap flight, because there's a group that you know, whether it is Soul to Soul or whichever group that it was in the
musical youth.
Precisely. They're doing something, they're performing in Ibiza. Okay? And you could get a cheap flight that you just, essentially what you pay is next to nothing, just the taxes. And you can go there overnight and get a cheap hotel and then come back. We don't have that connectivity in terms of, you know, traveling across the continent. You want to maybe go to some parts of Africa. You need to go to Paris before you get here. I was in Addis Ababa a few weeks ago at the AU summit, and the CEO of Ethiopian Airlines was talking about a country that even doesn't allow Ethiopian Airlines to land there because they're afraid of competition, when the competition will actually be better for the consumer. But if you have the protocol for free movement, for right of business and the rest of it, all of them being passed and ratified, then you have a court that you can go and enforce these rules if they are breached. Then we are going to have a proper single market. But as it is, yes. So we're saying to ourselves, look, we've relied on these. Our leaders seem to be quite comfortable to go and just, you know, adopt these treaties and protocols, and they come back home and then they do their own thing. Whilst they are not seeing the link between economic integration, industrialization, the capacity to grow jobs, enough jobs, create enough jobs for the youth, and stability, and peace, security, stability, and prosperity. They are not seeing the link. Even the security and stability of our sovereign territories will depend on the capacity of our economies to create jobs for the young people. And they are not seeing that link. And I think that's where the challenge is. So we're saying that, look, let particularly the young people of our continent, and when we say the young people of Africa, we are not just talking about Africans within Africa. As Marcus Garvey said, he said, Africa for Africans, both home and abroad. Okay, so we are talking about the broader global African community as well. Because, you know, so long as Africa, the narrative of Africa, the image of Africa, the reality of Africa is one of a place of destitution, every person of African descent, whether your parents are, whether you are Arabic, whether you speak Swahili, whether you Hausa, whether you are Dagomba, whether you are Zulu, whatever it is, or whether you're African American or Jamaican or Guyanese or British African or whatever it is, even the integrity, the respect that you deserve, you don't get it. So we must all connect to this movement. And the importance of this movement is that we are saying that, look, if we are able to petition, to mobilize about 10 million signatures, then we go to our leaders in Addis Ababa and say, these are your own people talking. They are not just waiting for you to implement at your will, whenever you feel like it. But they are saying that you've adopted these treaties and protocols because Madam said that we don't need any more decisions. There are enough decisions to give us that single market that we call for. Because look, Stoneboy is telling you about interoperability. The challenge he has is that those who have access to Visa cards, to MasterCards, they can make their purchases. And a lot of them are in the West. In Africa, we deal with mobile money. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
Okay. That is what is creating inclusivity across the continent. 60% of the value of global transactions in mobile money is in Ghana, in Africa. We heard the figures recently. Was it billion cedis worth of mobile money transactions in Ghana alone? 4 trillion cedis. That's what? About 300 something billion what? Dollars. 4 trillion. You know, we're not even talking about the profit that MTN and all of them are making. But this is what we are talking about. And it means that within our economies, people are trading where they can or when they can, when they're given the opportunity to trade. Okay? So people can buy Stoneboy's music, Sarkodie's music, Shatawale's music, Davido's music, whoever. You know, we are a bit old-fashioned. If you're not careful, we start mentioning CK Man and those who are not even there. So they want to buy all this. Okay? But the challenge they have is that once it crosses the border, their mobile money wallet does not work. It doesn't work. So that Stoneboy is not able to monetize. And because we don't have free skies, even though they have the single Africa air transport market protocol, the Yamoussoukro decision, which some countries have been slow in implementing. So we don't have freer skies as we should have. But if we have freer skies, then some young professionals or who have some money to spend can decide that Stoneboy is playing in Ho. I will fly to Accra and then go and watch. The next day I can get a budget hotel. The next day I can go back to my country. You know, so that flexibility is absolutely critical. And you know, the other
I've got some questions from some of our participants that I'll quickly like to plug in before the 9 minutes that we have left. And yeah, in fact, there are hundreds of questions, and also be able to get clip each from Ras and Samia before we wrap up. This one is from Razak Suleimana, and he says, greetings to our respected panelists, especially Honorable Ras Mubarak, former MP of my hometown, as well as Stoneboy, a fellow Shaman National. I feel privileged to be on the same call with all the esteemed personalities. My question is, how can African countries address concerns around security and immigration while promoting free movement of people and goods? So just a short response to that would be wonderful. Just mark that for me. And then Shemuel Yerushalmi says, question for discussion: how government and agriculture sector of Ghana can contribute to ensuring food security in Africa. So this is about food security in Africa with all the arable land that Ras Mubarak referred to early on. And then Dennis Carter says, my question goes to Madam Zuma, who's unfortunately left, but we can share this with her anyway. She's been a former chair of the African Union. How does she see the AU in the next 10 years? I think this question must have come before she spoke, or at least the second dip into the panel. Then Mwali Andrew Stevens says, Africa has the capacity to do better, but we really don't wish each other well. And this has made nations far away from Africa to isolate us, and nations that are far away from Africa to isolate us and maltreat us. Philip TMT says, please, will all African leaders align in terms of achieving the borderless system by the date set? Philip, that's what we're trying to do. And that's why you must sign, that's why you must add your signature. Asha Amani, Africa Collaboration Chamber says, through the journey of the Continental Agreement evolution, what could be that one thing that is getting us stuck, not to implement the AFCFTA and borderless Africa? The idea is beautiful, we get emotional about it, and yet countries take too long to ratify and let alone implement it. I think I can just add one more. If by 2028 we achieve the goal of a borderless Africa, how long will it take for Africans to have a single currency to be free from the capture of the US dollar? And that's from Ibrahim Abdul Fattah. Okay, let me just add this. Ashim Jima from Ghana says, Madam Zuma, I am Clement from Ghana. Young people have always been organized by the challenge, but the challenge has been our leaders disabling young people by buying juicy promises. We need support for young people to be independent and to focus on the future. Honorable Ras has been a great example. Thank you. So Ras, big up to you from a lot of the young people. So final word, we've got 5.5 minutes. Final word from you, Samia, quickly, and then I'll go to Ras, Stoneboy, and Gab. So
thank you.
Please dip in and out.
Yeah.
Samia, are you on?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
A very quick summary in, say, a minute.
Anyway, I'm very happy Stoneboy brought up this question about breaking down what we are talking about. And this is one of the reasons we thought the Kwame Nkrumah Foundation that we hope to launch later this year. One of the things we are brainstorming about is how to have courses, and I don't mean difficult intellectual courses, but how to teach what Pan-Africanism is, what African unity is, and how it affects people economically, how it can make a difference in your life now, economically. How can it make you more prosperous, give you jobs? So I agree with you. One of the things that has to be done is, I call it education, but it's spreading the word, spreading the word. We have not yet done sufficient work to break down and spread the word, because the whole idea of unity is to raise the standard of living. And who are the people whose life needs to improve more than anybody else? It's the people who are at the bottom of the scale. So if they understand, nobody else. So I'm happy you've brought it up. And I think that should be the job and the task of all organizations which are preaching African unity.
Thank you, such as the Kwame Nkrumah Foundation. And please do sign the, please add your signature if you haven't done so yet, Samia.
Okay, I will find out, yes. Thank you.
So let me go to Ras. Ras, give us a soundbite. Memorable. Ras Mubarak. All right. While he tried to, okay, Ras, are you there? Okay, Ras Mubarak, if you can hear us, think of a soundbite, give us a parting shot, something memorable. In the meantime, let me go to Stoneboy.
Thank you.
Stoneboy, your parting shot.
Yeah. Yes, I think it is very important as creatives of Africa, especially the big names, to be tasked by their states and empowered to be the voices that amplify the actions we need to make, because the people connect to us directly. Like what I did yesterday at Ho, 25K. I played the whole I put the scan out there and I asked them to take their phones out. So very beautiful. Only us can be the voice of the people. Let the state empower us as creatives who have worked so hard to have the numbers and be the voice of Africa in and out of Africa to amplify these initiatives. That's all I can say. Else, we're not going to go so far. We can be the new day Nkrumahs doing the work of the Nkrumahs and the forefathers who need something to be done. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much, Stone Boy. Tap into the voices of the creatives so they can amplify the voices of the youth to get the job done. Brass.
Well, thank you very much.
What's your parting shot?
It's been a fruitful discussion. I would like to say that we need to keep the conversation going. Beyond these platforms, we've got to put a lot of impetus, action, demand of our leaders, and tell our friends, about what we're doing, the signatures we're trying to collect. But more than anything else, it would take political will to get it done. So there's got to be sufficient amount of pressure on the leaders, to act on the protocols that they have signed, as far as the African integration is concerned. But the conversation has to continue in all platforms.
Rasta, when is your next trip, your next road trip? Are you going to try to make it through the countries you didn't do the other time?
So we're looking at the second phase of the campaign, which would be to travel by air to countries that we were unable to reach. For instance, Egypt shares border with Libya and Sudan. You can't drive there, you would have to fly. And then also to follow up on countries that have given us commitments, like Uganda, where the president said in the next 3 years, like Angola, where they are also committed to the cause. And hopefully, in the next couple of months, we should be embarking on the second phase, given the availability of resources.
Excellent, excellent. And best wishes. Thank you for your great work. And finally, Gabi.
Thank you, Kweku. Thank you for all the panelists and thank you for the participants. This has been great. I'll just say that Africa is not poor. Africa is fragmented. And until we unite the market, we will be then seen as poor. But if we unite the market, then we can unleash the wealth. The borders that divided us were not built by us. They defined our past. We shouldn't allow those borders to arrest our future. It's important that we recognize that, and at the end of the day, if we're going to be able to create jobs, we need to allow that market of 1.5 billion to take over our fragmented markets. That's really what I would say. And then I think that the people of this continent, the young people of this continent, the SMEs of this continent, the women of this continent, join this movement. All you need to do is just sign up and get 20 others to sign up. And can you imagine if we show up in Addis Ababa next year with 10 million signatures? We are around 100 and something thousand now. I believe we can get there. And I know it can be done. Let's show them that we want them to implement the treaties and protocols that will unite us and want them to do it now. It can be done. It's the political will that is lacking. We should ensure that we put fuel in that machinery that will allow the politician to move. Let's move because we want to have the freedom to move. That's what I would say. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Gabi. You know, the saying that is now, it's pretty common now, says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But we say that we want to go fast and together. And that is possible. And to do that, go to the APN website and sign the petition. Make Africa Borderless Now movement petition if you want to go fast and far. Thank you. and have a wonderful rest of Independence Day. And my name is Kwaku. Bye for now.
In Accra, during the Africa Prosperity Dialogues, delegates from across the continent and the diaspora came together for the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026. They met to empower SMEs.
Ghanaians, South Africans, Ethiopians.
Even though I'd been paid to perform, I was stopped at the border.
When Africans tried to pay Africans across borders, currencies detoured.
When Africa stood at the crossroads of integration, we did not hesitate. We chose action.
Play your part. It can be done. It must be done. We must have a borderless Africa.
Sign the petition. We want a borderless Africa now.
Africa's prosperity lies in its unity, in its oneness. Many treaties have been signed, but now it's time for execution and action. Sign the petition now at makeafricaborderlessnow.com. Let's build a new future for Africa, one signature at a time.